Hello, this is Anjani here, and I have the Mystic Raven, and I'm really excited to interview and ask some questions. I met this wonderful person, I think it was in April 2019, so this year on Instagram during a live call, and was really blown away by the precision of the reading that she was doing for a group of people, and so much so that I actually that day went ahead and booked a private session. And the weird, I don't usually do that, but the thing that got me was I went to her website and saw that her shit was put together well. There was a format. Everything was like, this is a person who is intuitive and also has intelligence and some structure and form to the creative flow, which I really value a lot. I want to ask some questions and sort of get a little bit deeper into understanding the way your mind works and
Okay.
how like what led you into it's a bold step to create a business based off of using your own mind and your spirit, your intellect, your intuition, and being able to bridge all of that into a format to help people. Or I'm not sure if that's the words you would use. So how do you experience what's happening when you're reading for people and helping people with their material? That's one question. The other question is, how did you start doing that? And how did it become a structure and form that you're able to work from?
Oh man. Okay, where to start with that? Well, so I guess like even when I was a little girl, like occult topics always really caught my attention. What little girl doesn't like the witches? You know what I mean? So it was like that, but it was a little bit more than that. Like I remember being little and finding sticks in my backyard and tying them together, and I'd walk around my yard and I would pretend I was calling spirits to me with them, and it was like this. I was just always like really into that kind of stuff, and then my family was super structured religious Christian, so that whole realm was like a taboo no, which made me want it even more. So there was always just this drive there, and then I don't know, over the years, I myself even got wrapped up in religion. I ended up going through seminary for a little while. And then once I actually started, I actually got a really good mentor who was like deconstructing the Bible for me, how it was written, how it came about, like the Jewish and Hebrew translation, the Greek translation, all of this. And I was like, oh, most of this shit made up. I'm out. And like I was just like, that's it. Like I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh yeah, this is the one way. And like and that was actually the beginning of like my Saturn return. It was like Saturn
Mm.
was just at the end of my 12th house, about to hit my ascendant, and all of a sudden I started deconstructing all my spiritual beliefs. And so I was like, I started going back on my path that I had neglected, which was more like shamanistic, working with spirit animals and looking at signs and natures, which I naturally did since I was little anyway. When I
Mhm.
started going back on that is when I started feeling more at home in myself. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, there's something to this. And yeah, I started, man, I think I met somebody who was they did spell work using the Bible. And I was like, oh, yo, I can combine. Because my whole thing was like, I just learned all this shit about the Bible for all these years. Like, that can't go to waste. The universe isn't going to waste that. It has to come up somewhere. And then all of a sudden I was seeing like, yo, this is about to be integrated. And so I kept going with it. And then I discovered like divination. And when I got my first tarot deck, I was like, yo, um this is my it was like I remember holding my first deck in my hand and my eyes teared up like I was holding a best friend from like many lifetimes and I was about to get to know it again. And I did my first spread for myself and it was like everything was so just clear and there and I got it. And yeah, from there out, I was like trying to give readings to as many people as I can. And as I kept building up and building up, my gifts started coming in clearer. I actually did do a ritual that was for like getting blessed, I'll say, with like super super psychic abilities. So after I did that is when it really started getting intense, where like I could literally, like, my joke is always like, because I used to go on my IG live and I used to like read off the siding of a building, like people's whatever was going on. So like my abilities to do all of that, like scrying and like crazy shit like that, definitely comes from that ritual that I did. um I've always had, since I was a little girl, like, I mean, I can remember being like 5 and 6 years old and having this insane drive to want to help people. Like, I used to go sit next to the mentally ill people in the park that were talking to themselves and be like, I need to be there to listen to them. Someone has to help them. How come no one wants to be their friend? Like, it would like, I was like, I need to be around these people. Like, I always just wanted to help people. So, when I started getting into my spiritual gifts, I started realizing, oh, like I need to be helping people spiritually. I've been helping them with health and nutrition for so long, but I always knew there was more to it. Especially when people would come into my shop and be like, I have XYZ illness, but then like images would come in my head of what's going on with them spiritually. And I'm like, oh, this illness is totally emotional. So everything started kind of coming together, and now it's like I feel like I'm living my dream of like actually helping people like remove their blocks, heal themselves. And you know, my whole thing of the Raven is bringing what's hidden into the light so it can be transformed and created into something better.
Mm. I really love what you just said about um, the thing behind it. The words that you used was like you were helping people with nutrition and health things, and then being able to see when they're coming into the shop and they have this symptom going on, but you're able to understand that it comes from something else. And
Yeah.
I think that that's a thing that has really also in my reality bubble, also from studying all of these things, it boils down to that. Like there's this imprint on our body and in our field around us, that when we can work at that level, all the other things get better.
Yeah.
you know so, and then do how did your format come up? There's a lot of people like you, or not a lot of people like you, but that are working in their house in a room somewhere, and they don't really have a structure, when I think that's really a limiting factor, because I would have never booked with you had you not had that structure set up that made it seem like this person is serious and taking this serious. And how did you come up with that format?
Like for my website or?
Yeah, it's like very practical. You know what I mean? It's like there's not a lot of practicality with a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I don't really know how to answer that. I guess like um it was like over time, like at first, because like at first it was just like tarot reading. So I'm just like, well, I'm gonna write a little bit about myself and then like what kind of reading, like what tarot readings I offer. But like as I kept going,
Mm.
my spirits just kind of showed me like, you know, well, you're not really just like predicting the future or giving readings for like, is he gonna come back to me? Is he gonna text me tonight? Like that's not my cup of tea. Like people would call me for stuff like that, and then like the cards would be like, oh, they don't even want to talk about that. Like that just happened to me the other night. Someone came in asking about one thing. I'm like, oh nope, they want to talk about something completely different. My job is to transform people, like let spirit transform people through me. So I guess like that's what my focus has always been. So as I was doing that in my own life, my spirits were just kind of like, you know, this is how this can be a service. So that's how I started coming up with my subscription packages. And then yeah, the other things that I offer. So I guess it was just through my own like trials. It started really basic, but like I like to expand and change constantly. So it just kept growing and turning into other things.
Okay, perfect. Yes, that's what I'm wondering because there's so much there, and now I can get that image of like, okay, it started off as this one thing. Once you said
Mhm.
yes to that thing, you start doing that, then that evolves and expands. So now you have all these different ways that people can engage with you and work with you.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, and it's
I
forever
love that.
changing. I think that that's the thing is like if you're going into like a spiritual business or anything like that, like don't be afraid to like change what you offer. I mean, because I think I told you this, like there was so like my astrology knowledge and stuff, like yes, I do have like knowledge, but like a lot of it is spiritually given to me in a reading. And there was a couple months where my spirits were like, you can't do astrology readings anymore. And I was just like, because for my own personal reasons, I had to take a break. Literally, I would have people come in my shop and bring me their charts, and I would look at them, and I literally nothing. I was like, I literally got cut off. So I took astrology readings down from the website for a while. I made them invisible so people couldn't book them. So it's like things are always kind of, even with products I offer, it flows. It's like I like to be fluid. I don't like to be held to like rigid structure. So I think that if you walk some kind of spiritual path and you're called to lead others spiritually, it's important to not have such rigid structures all the time and be more, I don't know, Pisces about it.
Okay, good. So have you experienced people coming in and wanting you to prove something to them? Like prove that you're a psychic or prove that you're able to, so they'll, how, and okay, so yeah, I guess that we all experience that. Someone like, oh, can you really sense? And how do you work with that?
In a couple different ways. Um, well, okay, so this always goes back to my spirits that like talk to me, right? So I'll know if someone, well, apart from Scorpios, because I will say when I read for Scorpios, their silence and is just because they're taking it all in and pondering on the inside. So I will like omit Scorpios from this. But everyone else, like, yeah, certain people when they come in, um, I can tell that they're trying to like test me, or they're like not like I'm asking a question, but because like there are some things like I need to know a little bit more about this because I'm getting things very metaphorical in my head, and I'm trying to read energy. So for me to transfer what I'm feeling or seeing through that, I need to know certain things, right? Like as a person you're asking about, is it like your partner or your cousin? Like it's gonna help me to kind of, you know. So yeah, I do have people test me sometimes, like to see if like, oh, is this like legit? Sometimes it depends on the person because like I've had my spirits be like tell them to stop fucking around and to like that because they're in here trying to prove something, and I will literally relay that message and then they laugh and they know that I'm real because of that. Or sometimes it'll be like tell them this and it's something that nobody knows. And so I'll just be
Mhm.
like, okay, yeah, my spirits want me to say XYZ, or they want me to tell you about or say why did you da 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 da, and then they'd be like, oh, and then that's when it kind of the ice is
Okay.
broken.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The first time I had a reading or a session with somebody who was a psychic, in the first 3 minutes, she was like, "Oh, your mom's mom just died. She was racist against you." And like told some deep in that first little section. I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Like, saying things that nobody would have known.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that I, I don't think that you would have to do that, but for some people, for some reason, it breaks the barrier of
Yeah.
doubt. Um,
Well, it does for us as readers too, because remember, like we're trying to like be like, am I making this up? Is this really coming through? Like sometimes that's why like when I'm in it, I'll talk really fast and just let it come out. It makes it so that my brain doesn't have time to question what's happening. So I just kind of let it keep rolling. That's when you could tell when I'm really in like the flow because I'll just like and I like won't stop, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh wow, I just said a lot. Like but yeah, because there's times when people's like ancestors or like like their dead relatives come through, and they'll show me something so specific that was to their relationship, and when I say that thing and it confirms it, it also just like how it like helps them know that yes, this is really me. I'm here to try to communicate through this person to you, but also help me be like, okay, I'm like tuned into the right spirit. I'm hearing right.
Mm. Okay, yeah. I also was wondering about last time we were chatting before we had the recording on, and you were saying some really amazing, powerful things that I felt were like really important for a lot of people to know. And it was, I mean, I feel like the topic was more related to women
Hmm.
because I was mentioning I had just read that book, The Alphabet versus the Goddess, and about reasons why we might, as women, as people with wombs and breast tissue, and might be reluctant to tap into nature and our relationship that we have with the soil and the earth and plants, and using plants medicinally and working in these like magical ways. You know, I say magical like it's a very natural way. And you had a lot of really important insight into why we might do that. And I was wondering if you would be willing to talk a little bit about that at whatever level you feel comfortable talking
Hmm.
about that. Mainly because as I start working more with growing plants and making medicine, I really feel like this deep love and connection that the plants have for us and relationship with us. And it feels a little bit devastating too. Like there's like an elation and a bliss that also is coupled with sort of like grief that more people aren't accessing this, and partially maybe because of things that have happened in our human history that kept us from that sacred knowledge of nature.
Hmm.
So would you want to talk any about that?
Well, my view and my perception on this is the fact that women have been burned in this at the stake from the beginning for doing this. So, like, witchcraft really like was always about just using herbs for medicine. Like that's what got labeled witchcraft, right? So you have like the colonizers that came over here and they used their Bibles and their religion to be like, oh, you guys are witches, and but it was just that was like used as a way to take over and to people use religion to control people, but women in specific were the ones that like if you got called a witch, that was like a derogatory term. um Now they're like it's almost like women are trying to take that word back and be like, no, this isn't a bad thing, like yes, we are witches, and women, hey doggies, and women sorry, and and women are trying to stand up more in their power and put more of like a good name on that word. But I mean, here when we had like the Salem witch trials, I mean, those were all like midwives and just people that were putting herbs together to help to heal the body, and it was like the patriarchal system was just like, no, we must have the control and structure all this, like the men know the best, the patriarchy. And they would find ways to really just torment women, to torment them, to torture them, to kill them, literally just for being who we are. So when there's this like apprehension to go back to that and that fear, I really feel like it's just still feeling that consciousness that's still stuck in this matrix of like, we need to be afraid to do this. And I think one of the things that bothers me the most is like when you see I guess like on social media, I'll call them like advanced witches, like people who have been in this a long time, who kind of like pick on the younger or newer crowd and being like, oh, well, you're not a witch because your grandmother didn't teach you nothing. But it's like, well, yeah, grandma didn't teach you nothing because her great whatever was burned at the stake and then everyone converted to Christianity. Like, why are you like, I think we need to like take the matriarchal energy back and put it back in this where women are going to come together and help the little witches, right? Like come into themselves, because that's how it was done. it was like an oral thing where it was like you felt comfortable going to the older woman and she would show you how to do things, and women together is very, very powerful. And yeah, the patriarchal system knew this, so everything was about separate the women, make them scared to walk in their power. And as you know, with this whole stellium going on in Capricorn with the North Node in Cancer, we're making that switch right now. And I guess like too though, I want to say like not to hate men in the process, because I always like to remind people the patriarchy is a program that was inserted into the matrix. It's not men. Like it doesn't represent men, because men are suffering under the patriarchy too. They have been told they can't be emotional, they can't be this, they have to be this for so long. Like it affects them just in a different way than it affects us as women, you know. And while maybe they weren't burned at the stake, like there's other things that they're burning internally for and have been for a long time, and they're all severely wounded. It's the patriarchal programming, it's not like a sex thing, like a gender thing.
You know what? A lot of times, well, when I read that book, one of the things that I learned was that it was 80% women who were burned
Wow.
and tortured. It's the burning actually was a blessing compared to the other things that they did. But it was only 80%, meaning that 20% were men. And I feel like it's those I know those men that make perfume and work with plants, and you know, they do rituals and ceremonies and teach and do all of these things. And I like to also think about the brothers and the husbands and the fathers that really suffered when their beloved daughter, or you know, young daughters even, and wives and all of that were going through what they went through. And oh my gosh. So at this point, I feel like it's not affecting us in the same way. I remember when there was a literal day that I came out of my house wearing clothes that I felt represented who I was, and I was carrying a deck of oracle cards, and I was on my way to my office to do massages, and I was going to do an astrology video over there. And it was like a moment that I was like, I don't have to do this in the secret. You know, I don't have to do it in the dark anymore by myself, like as a secret thing. And I was actually carrying a stick of incense that I had lit at home because I didn't have a lighter in my office. So I was walking down the street carrying a lit incense with my astrology charts on a clipboard, a deck of oracle cards,
Yep.
and my linens for massage. And when I got to my office, I told the first person I saw, like, I'm not afraid anymore. And she's like, we already knew this was you. Why were you trying to hide it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I think inside it, there is like not anymore, but for some people, there still is maybe a shroud of fear and doubt around what are other people going to think. And then, yeah, you know, is
Yeah.
this bad?
I
Is this
mean,
going to
and
make me a bad person or something?
it's like, um, when you get to a point where you just love yourself so much you don't give a fuck, that's when you know you've really made it. Because like, um, I mean, my family comes up against me
Mm.
constantly, and when I was younger, it used to make me question, and it used to make me want to change, and I would change, and then I would just like do stuff in secret, and then I got so fucking sick of it. I'm like, I'm sick of this mask, and I'm never gonna put this mask back on once I take it off. So I remember having that talk with myself, like, am I really gonna be ready to take this mask off? Because when I do, it's all out, and that's it. And then I did, and I don't care. Like I don't care. Like I mean, I have family members like tell me that the way I live my life is completely wrong, that everything I do is wrong. It's just like it's just because it ain't their way and it makes them uncomfortable because I'm doing something that they're not comfortable doing. And that's really what it is. It's fear. And a lot of people fear, especially powerful women and confident women. And people fear some things that are different from what they're used to. And if it didn't make them afraid, they'd be doing it themselves. So it's like,
Mhm.
I really just, I don't know. I guess it was just like that day when I was just like, no, I love myself too much just to be fake, to not let out who I really am. And that was it. I just was just like, I don't really care who comes against me, who
Mhm.
tries to use their thumb to put me down or cover up my true colors or try and like I'm not changing for no one anymore. And that's like when I started doing that, my life really started changing, because then it was like my life looked like the life I wanted it to look like, not what everybody else thought it should look like. So that's how I became happy, because my life was looking
Mhm.
like I was the one making decisions for me now, right? So how else could I? Obviously, I'm gonna be happy.
Mhm. What I was wondering, today the sun is conjunct Mercury, and it's for you. It's in your 12th house. That's happening in the 12th house, and there's this 13-year thing. So 13 years ago in November 2006, is that 13 years ago? Um, that was the last time we had this Sun Mercury conjunction. Then we'll have it again 13 years from now. I think it's 2032, something like, yeah. And I've been kind of just in my mind, I haven't gone to my chart yet. I'm definitely going to do that today after I get done with these massages I have to do. I'm going to look back at November 2006 and see what astrologically was going on. And then kind of, I like to track the patterns. This,
I do
I
that.
got North Node,
That's why I journal.
Virgo. Yes, it's really helpful to do that. So for you, November 2006, do you remember anything specifically like in that time frame that you had going on? It could be anything,
Yeah. Well, okay, so this is interesting for me because natally I have Sun exact conjunct Mercury too. So now I'm thinking like,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
so this is obviously bringing up real childhood stuff. Okay. So 2006, oh, I was still in like I was like graduating high school around, I think 2006 I graduated that year. So I was a drug addict. You know what? That's funny because um the last few days I've been talking about that, about drugs a little bit more with people. That's kind of funny. But yeah, I what would be going around like in November? I don't even think I could remember because I was really fucked up back then.
Okay, well, I want to say that you did mention that on the last, I think it was last week, we also, or maybe the week before, we got together and did a video, and you mentioned popped that in where I was like, oh shit, I didn't know that, and I would love to explore that a
Sure.
little bit, especially since it's in your 12th house, which has to do with like nebulous information and the deeper corridors of your reality of who you are in relation to the rest of the world, the 12th house.
Okay.
So yeah, I want to. So I'm in my mind, I'm seeing like, okay, so if that information is coming up again, first I want to say everybody has a different thing. Like the Mercury retrograde with the Sun is going over my 7th house directly on Uranus today, on my Uranus, on my natal Uranus, and it just dawned on me like as I started like what was I doing in November 2006? Oh yeah, I was in Japan. Oh yeah, I was breaking away from my husband at the time, and I did it in a real sneaky way, like booked my own,
Wait a
booked
minute,
a
I could have
flight.
been in Japan too.
You stop.
No, I think I was visiting my grandma in Okinawa.
What?
I did that my senior year in the winter time. I'm gonna have to go
Oh,
look.
okay, winter time. Definitely look, because I feel like looking deeper into that pattern of like what was happening is sort of helping us to understand about now.
Yeah.
Like the choices that we made during that specific time, like just in the pattern of Mercury in our mind and our ability to go deep in vulnerability and intimacy with other people, and being able to express more of our own depth, because that's what Scorpio is about the depth of our own being and our underbelly, our guts, like literal guts. And then in the term we use metaphorically, like, do you have guts?
Yeah.
Scorpio is the gut, and then we have that. And with the Mercury retrograde together with the sun, how we express our guts. And I feel like with you, I feel like when I think about you or connect with you, I feel that like there's a real bravery and courage, and you just coming out and talking about what you're experiencing psychically and energetically. And so, I'm asking you about your 2006, November 2006, like what might have been going on with you at that point that has informed who you are today, the way that you speak and think, and the actions that you take based off of your perceptual capacity to be in relationship with the world. So don't worry if you can't remember right now, like maybe just by us even just chatting. Yeah.
I'm going to ask my husband, because we actually went to high school together. So I'm going to ask him what he was doing.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll give me hints to what I was doing. But no, yeah, I mean, I was hardcore into drugs for a long time. It's weird. I really like drugs. Like it's just in me to like drugs. Like I don't do them now. So like I'm sober now, but there's still times where I'm like I really want to go get fucked up because I like doing drugs. Like it's just like this inner. And that's why I kind of laughed, but I was like, oh, I've been talking about this recently, but it's more along the lines because like if I could right now, I would just go get fucked up. But so for me, it's like there was times where it's like, yeah, I'm stressed, so I'm gonna go use drugs to like forget about my stress. But it wasn't, that was probably only like 20% of the time, because the other like 80% of the time or more, it was really about me escaping this world into the next. I really liked popping stuff and taking stuff that got me out of this reality and into a different one. And it was really easy for me to bridge into the spiritual realm and like the weird. And to it's like I always really thought very weird, and then when I would like get these drugs in my system and allowed me to express that weirdness. So maybe that's what this is for me. Like right now I'm doing it sober. I talk about the weird shit, I express it weird, and I'm sober as a judge. So I think it's just like me I don't know. It's like like you guys, like Jim Morrison's my idol. Like he's a Sagittarius. Scorpio Venus. I have his chart. Like he's like my idol, right? I mean, you talking about like, yeah, let's take a bunch of drugs and write some poetry. That's me. Like that's what I would do. Like
yeah.
I would literally listen to I would like take a bunch of like e-pills or something and then like write poetry and listen to the Doors by myself in my bedroom. Like I didn't want to be around no people. Like it was a spiritual, like I liked visual things, like to be able to see into the spirit realm, and so like drugs were always kind of like my branch.
So when I think about drugs, personally, I think about Neptune, because Neptune is that part of us that is drugs. It's laughing gas and whatever other. Isn't Neptune a gas planet?
Yes.
I mean, it's that part of us that wants those experiences. So today with the sun and Mercury, they're in square aspect to Neptune. And so when you started talking, I was wondering about your natal Neptune, and then how, like, there's different ways that we're going to integrate that part of ourselves that is transpersonal. And I feel like when people are into drugs, that it's because they know that they're experiencing a transpersonal transpersonal states, and they want to be able to express them, like you just said, or they know that that's a part of them and they're not able to get into it, and so that the drugs help them to experience that. So since you're mentioning, the drug thing, it's bringing up Neptune, and then possibly looking at Neptune on your chart too, and seeing how that plays into the way you express and communicate, and that being, maybe it's a primary part of your cognitive function.
I have Neptune in Capricorn, like right, like it like just hit Capricorn, I think, in my second
like
house.
like at zero, like a
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes when I see my Neptune in Cap, it reminds me of like why I'm a good medium to the dead, because that's that's putting psychism on Earth, and that's necromancy to me. So like when I like started getting more into necromancy, my own Neptune, like my spirit started bringing it to my attention to research it more, and that's how I'm like, I wonder if this is why I can communicate with the dead. But yeah, I wonder if like what other aspects would actually put like the it's weird because like I'm a Sag rising, so it's like that whole higher philosophical whatever. It's like I would want to throw drugs in there to like, I used to take drugs and study like like I liked mind expansion of every way possible, and when that enhanced it, I was like, yeah, this is fun. But now I can.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and so now it's like learning to do those things without drugs. I mean, I've been sober for like 10 years now, or maybe more. So I just stopped counting. But like, because it's not a part of my life anymore, so I don't really pay attention to it. I'm not really one of like, oh, I've been X amount of sober. I don't really do that because it's not me anymore. So it's like, I'm not like sober mystic. I'm just mystic. Like that phase of my life is over, so I'm just on to the next.
So mystic. I wanted to also mention, I can't remember the exact year. I'm getting 1840, but I can't confirm that. But when Neptune was discovered, and I like to research these things and see what else was going on in the world at that time. And it's really interesting that Neptune, which has to do with our dissolving of boundaries and having this experience of being the sea of oneness. It's a lot like Pisces in that sense, that it's not just the fish, it's that fish being the fish and the sea itself, like not knowing the separation between me and the wave, and having that experience of connectedness. And when Neptune was discovered, it was actually a time when a lot of places were defining their boundaries. So it's kind of this weird duality thing where everything was more permeable, and there's no real border that you're crossing. It was sort of just people on land who were figuring out their stuff. And when Neptune was discovered, it was a lot of defining boundaries. So that's where I started getting that idea of the boundaries being where we meet, the boundaries being how we define myself in space and time, and where I can meet you and in your space and time. So through those defining of the boundaries, we really are saying, maybe not implicitly, but we're saying that we know we are one, that we know that there is no separation here, that separation is an illusion, and these boundaries that we are building are really a place where we can meet.
That's really amazing, because this whole Scorpio season has been 100% about boundaries for me, and realizing where I was taught growing up that I shouldn't have boundaries, basically, and just, whatever. But like, and that's how I lost myself. So now it's interesting because what I've been like coming to find is that the Scorpio season is supposed to be showing us what we really need to work on. And as we work on that, it will make this Capricorn conjunction in January not as harsh, because like if you're doing the work now, you're not going to be forced to do it. And literally since the day the sun moved into Scorpio, I have not been stopping with like all of a sudden having to assert boundaries of my value system, which would be my second house. So literally,
Wow.
I have been nonstop. I guess my Neptune's being activated because like I have been being like, is this my value system or this other person's? And then where am I putting my foot down? And I've literally probably
Wow.
told so many people to fuck off in the last 3 weeks. It's been insane. And I don't even care. And every time I did it, I felt more liberated because I felt like I had more room to be me now.
Okay. Okay. So the 12th house is also like Neptune, like Pisces. That 12, and so that this transit in your 12th house is sort of like you having this experience of oneness and needing to define what that means, so you can meet other people in this place of like, okay, well, here's where I end and you start.
Yeah.
Like create all these different things and being able to speak into them or type them or whatever way you're using to as a medium to express that and to create it, because it's an invisible thing, right? It's like in
Yeah.
permaculture, we have this thing called invisible structures. The invisible structures are all of those places where you have to decide something and make an agreement with whatever, with nature, with the bugs, or with your landlord about what you're going to do. You know what I mean? It's like it's an invisible structure that we're building so that we can meet in a way that is I don't know that it's because, see, when you tell somebody a boundary, you're giving them an opportunity to meet you. You're like, hey, I really want clarity on this specific topic. Where are you? Here's where I am. Where can we meet?
Yes.
It's not like setting the boundary isn't saying like, it's not being like, oh, there's the line and you crossed it, get out of here. It can be that too, because sometimes it is like, but what do you think about that? Like, do you give the person a chance by opening up a conversation? I know a lot of times people don't want to do that.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
I guess it depends, because there's some lines that everybody people should have set for themselves where it's like, if you cross this, you are done. And that, I mean, when someone is trying to deceive you or to like completely squander who you are or something like that, I think that that's just like no, I'm about it. I mean, at least for me, I'm really fiery, so it's like, if you deceive me in any way and lie and then like try to do something behind my back, that's it. I'll cut you out of my life and never think about you again. End of story. That's too much for me. But now, so this is actually, I like this question because so me and my husband, we had this time period during this retrograde for like a week straight where we didn't talk to each other. So that's a big deal because he's in a different state right now. So now we ain't even talking. And so when we did finally have our conversation, the whole entire thing was about boundaries. On my end, I was talking to him about how I look up to his strong boundaries because I my whole life didn't have any, and I'm trying to learn how to assert those right now. And then what I was telling him though was the fact that he has boundaries but never vocalizes them to me. So how the hell am I supposed to know what a boundary is to him? So we went through a long, so like with that, it's my partner. The conversation's worth it because I know that we in this for the long haul. So it's like we had a long talk about my needs and what I have now, my new discovered boundaries and what they are. And then he expressed to me his boundaries he's always had but never expressed. So now we're on this awesome wavelength of understanding where we at in life, and it's actually like brought our relationship like this. Boundaries do that. Boundaries don't separate you, they actually bring you closer together. And I feel like I understand him on a whole other level and he understands me on a whole other level. And it's like our needs It's like our needs are being met by our own selves, and then we can reinforce that to each other.
I love that.
Yeah.
So good.
Hard conversations
Um,
to have, but they need to be haved.
I wonder about how we can do some. I know it may not be important as much as it is with a partnership, but for someone like me who I'm not in a partnership, I'm in a lot of relationships with a lot of people that have different dynamics, like close friends and people who I would cuddle with and people who I would only, only massage and only, there's my kids and they each have their own different things
Yeah.
and there's so many. Um, so for me, I've just been sort of like, I'm just treating it all the same because I don't have one that's more important than the other. And it's very vulnerable and kind of scary at times where I need to like continuously. I have 5 planets in Pisces, and boundaries are also not a thing to me. I am the whole sea. I've continuously been feeling like the whole sea, and thinking that everybody else just knows what I'm thinking because your husband maybe has some of that too. Like, well, obviously she knew my boundaries because I know them, and it's like,
Yeah.
So I've been practicing over and over just saying that awkward thing to people that because and it is very vulnerable for me, and I've been like but I want to create more intimacy and closeness and be able to allow people a bridge or a place to meet me, not so much a bridge but a place to meet me. And through doing that, a lot of really cool things have been happening. Of course, again, the Mercury retrograde is in my 7th house, so this is probably more, about that. But what I think is like whatever you're experiencing, and that is creating something tangible that you can share. And then when you're speaking on your lives and your videos and stuff like that, we're able to get what you're getting, you know what I mean, from the Mercury retrograde. And then so whatever this thing is that I'm experiencing, it's shifting my thoughts and my ways of being, which when I speak, I'm sharing that and you get what I'm getting too. So we're, collectively getting to grow and learn from each other. Um, so
I think
yeah.
that everybody's always at their different. So like you're experimenting with like erasing boundaries right now, and I'm experimenting drawing them in. And this is where it comes to the point of it's like everybody is at a different point in their path and it should be honored and respected by the other person. You know what I mean? Because it's like I would never tell you no, and Johnny, that's wrong. Like you have to keep your boundaries up if you feel like right now is a time for you to completely delete them. Because every soul is on a different evolution. And there is I don't like there is no right and wrong in this. And I think that different people pop in your life to help you at different times and then pop out and then you move on to the next thing and then it's all to discover your own soul. So in this process of you like putting the eraser to boundary lines, like you're going to learn a lot about your own self, right? And you're going to evolve your own soul in a way that where I've already like have done that and got my lessons, and so now I'm evolving in a different way. So we're just at, and it's funny because I think our nodes are reversed. Your North Node's in Virgo and mine's in Pisces. So it's like it's just cool. Like it's just
Really
everyone's on a different path.
It's so interesting that you're saying erasing my boundaries when I feel like I'm drawing them by talking to people about like, oh, this is where I'm at and where are you, and saying the awkward things that are a friend wants to call and I'm like, you know what, I'm cooking food right now for my kids. I'm not
Oh
gonna
yeah,
I
that's
can
putting up boundaries for sure. Yeah, yeah.
I'm doing it with everybody. Whereas before, what I would have done was just not answered the call, not texted back till later,
Oh, I see
or
what you're saying.
yeah. So I'm coming and being like, it's harder for me because I before it was just a big mesh of ocean and didn't, and so now I am saying like being
Good.
more direct and
That's
you
awesome.
know yeah. So And the topic is more of, it's in this, in relation with other people and relationship with all these different relationship dynamics that I have set up, which I guess probably, well, how do you, hmm. So, because in the beginning you had mentioned like, well, with my husband, I know that this person is someone who is important. He's going to be here, and so that you know, you're taking it to that next level of effort to communicate with
Mhm.
him. And I'm like, I don't have that person, but I'm taking the opportunity with every single person I meet to
Mhm.
well, what do you mean by that, Mr.
Yeah, yeah.
Cashier person? Just said such and such. Like, I'm doing that because
Yep.
of, I like to call it practicing. It's like I'm practicing
Yeah.
flexing this thing. Um, so I was just wondering, like, for you, even if it's the person on Instagram, I don't know if this ever happens to you, who but is, you know, messaging you, asking you questions, and you're like, I actually have a link for people
Mhm.
to pay me for what you're doing right now.
Mhm.
You know, even though
Yeah.
that's not your husband, that's still somebody who you value and
Right.
respect, and
Well,
you want to give them an opportunity.
yep. So I have an imagery for this because I do go with images. Okay. So it's like a circle with like a bunch of circles around it, right? So on this really really tiny inner circle is like me and my spirits. Ain't no one getting in that. That's all that's in the circle. That's all there's room for. Then like right outside that little circle is like me and my husband, right? Then outside in that next circle is like me and my kids. Then like that next circle is going to be like my really close friends, and then like acquaintances, and then like Instagram people, and then like people that I don't even know, you know, people that come in my store, people on the street, the cashier. And it get so depending on what circle they fall in is how much of my like direct energy and like work from me they're going to get. Because like the cashier doesn't need to know about my personal life. You know, I can say hi if they have something, whatever. I can, but like it's gonna stop at a certain point. You know, where like my husband, it's gonna be more like yeah, we're gonna have healthy boundaries, but at the same time, it's like yeah, I'm gonna like hold your hand through this and then talk extra about it and then understand you more on a deeper level because you're not just wringing out my celery. You're like a vital part of my being. So I think it's just like wherever people fall in that is how much of my like intense energy, I guess, that they receive. Because like if
Mm.
I'm in the center of that and the energy goes outwards, it's like you know the people way out here aren't gonna receive as much. I mean, even like in my shop, like you know, I've had people come in and I'm just like, oh, okay, like did you find everything? And they're like, yeah, and then they start telling me about the divorce they're going through and like all this shit, and I'm just like, I'm literally your cashier right now because you haven't talked to me since you walked in here. But I apparently you needed some help. So like that person, you know, they go from just being like random customer to like, yo, do you like want to go in my room and talk about this? Like I help people do this. And so then I'd recognize when spirits like bringing people into my path too, you know, and try and help that
So
person.
that's
But
what I'm thinking. That's exactly what I'm talking about, because then in that moment where the person is, it happened to me on Friday. This person is like, oh, you've been making, I said I've been making herbal remedies, and she goes instantly into her diverticulitis and her intestinal. I was like, and then she asked me, like, what can I do for that? And I'm like, well, you know what? I actually have on my website, you can go onto the website and book a consultation, and we can look at that for you, period. So that was like me being like, yes, I hear what you're saying. And this for me was a boundary where I was able to say, here's where we can meet on what
mhm,
I'm being present and what you're presenting me with, you know? So
yeah,
that's what I'm wondering. Like, so if you're the cashier and somebody comes and they're telling you all this stuff, and then that's a place where you can be like, you know, I was just wondering what you would do, basically. That.
yeah.
So
I mean,
would you be able to say to a
the
person, be like, oh, well,
help. Yeah, usually I'm like, if you want some help with this, like I do consultations and I show them my little thing that I do. It's like, you know, you can we can I can help you through this if you want me to. But yeah, I think it's like when you start putting a value on your own worth of like being like I'm not just going to like you can like freely give information, but like when it comes to really helping, it's not even about you like being like, oh, well, I'm worth X amount. It's really about, do they value their own health? Because if she's had diverticulitis and is asking, and you give her one step, all you got to do to get an answer is go on my website, but she can't get herself to go do that step, she's not truly ready to be healed yet. And that's how you start weeding out as a spiritual worker who you really are ready to who's really ready to be healed. Because I'll tell you about being in the nutrition business for 10 years. There are people who identify with their illness, and they come in and will waste your time for an hour of talking and then not do anything, because they don't really know who they are outside of their MS or their whatever they have. They don't know what they would even talk about anymore if they didn't have that. So they're not really ready to give it up, and they won't do anything you say. So I always like to give them the option to take control of their life and click the link or book a consultation. I'll go get my book right now. If they're like, oh, no, I'll call when I'm ready, or I'm not ready to do that, then I know, well, I don't want to waste my time either, because in the beginning of all of this, I wasted a lot of time with a lot of clients that didn't do jack shit. And I don't care. The money doesn't mean as much to me as the